Hi guys, thank you again for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how I create very beautiful fluid floral prints with watercolor. So when I'm creating floral prints, I like for them to be very loose, very free. I like for the water to flow in between with not a lot of detail, and I'm going to show you how I do that, and especially how I do it when I'm creating like print designs for garments or fabrics. So I've just grabbed a few flowers out of my mom's garden. Don't tell her. I'm not exactly sure the name of these flowers, but I will find out from her and put a link in the description below if you're interested in purchasing. So I chose this pink flower because it does have a few different hues of pink and almost like magenta colors that blend in together. So I chose to do this one. So I'm just lightly sketching it out in pencil first. You guys probably can't see the pencil marks. I do use a very light pencil lead. And I'm just sketching out the petals, and I'm just sketching out the stem and as well as the leaves, just very lightly, very loosely, nothing very solid, because with watercolors, I really like for the watercolors to like tell the story of the painting, and I like for the watercolors to just give me like a spontaneous result and flow where it wants to go. So I love to use ink and gouache when I'm painting. Sometimes I do use like the solid watercolors, but for flowers I really love to use ink and gouache, especially ink, because the ink has a tendency to dissolve in the water really nicely, and as I said, just flow where it wants to go. So I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin's India ink, and I'm also using the Hydrus line from Dr. P.H. Martin. You can get it in basically any art store, any Hobby Lobby, a craft store, or on Amazon is where I get mine from most of the time. So I'm just using like a light orange color, a really light vibrant yellow color. You guys saw the first color that I put down was like a red gouache paint by Winsor & Newton. Just going to get in close so you guys can see how I apply the color down. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, then I'll just let you know that I use a technique called wet on wet technique. You can Google that technique if you're interested, but it's basically where you put the water down first and then you put down the ink or the watercolors inside of the wet substance, or inside of the wet paper, on top of the wet paper, for lack of better terms. So I'm just applying the water down first, and I'm applying it one petal at a time, one flower petal at a time. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of the gouache onto the wet water. So you can see that I'm starting from the inside of the flower and just lightly sweeping it out. And then I like to wet my brush in between and just apply like a light wash of water with the watercolor inside of the water jar, if that makes sense. So I've just applied another layer of water, and then I'm going to put another light layer of this. This is actually a red gouache color from Winsor & Newton, but it comes out like a very magenta-ish pink. Okay, so I'm dabbing the brush, half of the tip of the brush into the gouache, and then towards the middle of the brush I've dipped it into this Dr. Martin's purple ink color, and I'm just laying the brush on the side and lightly making little brush strokes. And as you can see, it's not controlled. When you're doing flowers, you just have to kind of eye it and see where you want to put your brush strokes. But to me, there's no right or wrong way to draw the flower. It's just about like the technique of getting the water and the ink mixed. I really don't try to make the flower exactly like the flower that I'm drawing. I just really like for it to create that very loose, beautiful effect. And if you've ever seen like a beautiful floral print gown or something, especially something for like bridal wear or homeware, then you've seen just that beautiful palette of florals. So I'm dipping my brush in this, it's like an orange yellowish color, and I'll put the exact names for the Dr. Martens inks below. But you can see I just dabbed it in the middle of the flower, and it's kind of spreading into the magenta color. And then I've taken the really bright yellow color that I showed you in the beginning, and I'm putting it in the middle of the orange color. So you guys can see already it looks just like a beautiful flower. Even if I left it like that, to me that would be just fine. So what I've done, I've taken a little bit of my dry Winsor & Newton palette, and I've dipped it in green just to create just a little bit of shadow. I am going to take some water and blend this green out so that it doesn't look so stiff. Okay, so I'm starting on the stem, and I'm just taking my clean watercolor brush and I'm applying water on the stem. You can see that some of the pink from the flower petals have kind of grown into the stem, which is fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm taking my watercolors and I'm applying it to the stem, and I apologize, this is actually not watercolors that I'm using for the stem. This is Dr. P.H. Martin's ink again. And you can see that I just put like one little splash of color, and it's grown into the full length of the stem. So I'm just taking different tones of green and adding it in at various places, some in the end of the leaf petal, some in the middle. But to me, the key to making this very loose is just applying the water first, and then just randomly applying the color, kind of eyeing it as you can see the shadows, where the shadows are falling on the actual flower petal. Just putting in a little bit of depth to make it look more realistic and to create some shadows. And you can also add in like a little bit of yellow on the stem color if you wanted to add in a little bit of orange, just so the stem doesn't look so flat, but it doesn't make it look too worked on. So I'm adding a little bit of this orange color. It's just like orange mixed with green, just to make it a little more interesting. And if you felt like you added like too much of like that orange, I guess it's like a forest green color, you can always just dip your brush in water, apply water, and kind of blend it out. And I'm going to do that towards the end. So I'm just applying a little bit more water to spread this out. I'm kind of distributing the green color from the stem onto the side of the flower. And at this point, I really like to stop and kind of analyze the flower and not work so fast, because the last thing I want to do is start to overwork it. I'll add a little bit more yellow on the sides and maybe down the bottom, a few splashes of yellow color. And then I have a finished flower. And guys, that took me all of maybe 6 or 7 minutes. So this is super easy to try. Let me know if you guys have ever tried to create a fluid floral print or any kind of prints for print design, especially in watercolor. And thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe below. I will see you next week.